So at this point, I want to go through a couple of slightly more advanced things in the way of lighting. I'm just going to load up a different scene for a second. So with this, I will be able to show you. Second. With this, I will be able to show you the levels. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to bring this back in. So a couple things I want to show you here. I'm just going to open up this little test scene. Sure, let's save all of that. Okay, so this little test scene right here, what I want to show you first is this idea of getting a proper base level for your lighting. So when you bring lights in to Unreal, they are normally 5 or 8 lux or whatever it is. That's not really realistic. In the real world, lights are much, much brighter than that. And you have, in the engine, you have this kind of auto exposure compensation, which you can, it's great for games because you don't necessarily want people to control their own camera when they're playing a game. That'd be really frustrating. So it has this idea of being able to auto expose. So if I come down here to my I want to control it, take control of it. You want to put a post-process volume in here. So I'm going to be coming back to my place actors, grabbing a post-process volume, dragging it into the scene. This post-process volume, you want to make sure that its infinite extent is set on so that it controls the entire world. Otherwise, it will just be this little box here that's its volume. So make sure it's controlling the entire world. And then you can do all kinds of stuff in here. You can change color correction, all kinds of things. This exposure mode, you can have this set to auto expose, which should use Unreal to regulate the exposure. I have this set to manual. What this basically does is mean that Unreal doesn't have control over it. I have control over it. And that means I can set it to manual. I can set the exposure compensation to 0. And then all my lights are going to behave properly. So now you can see this light here. I've got this directional light set to 10,000. If you create a scene, you're probably going to create one with an 8 lux in it. And that's kind of all right-ish, but you're also going to watch the exposure go up and down in your scene, and you won't have control over that. It's going to do weird stuff that as a filmmaker you wouldn't want. So you want to set that in post-process to manual, and then set the lux to bring the light back up. Because when you do that, set it to manual and infinite, it will go black and you'll freak out and say, "Ah, I broke my scene." But you haven't. You just need to bring your light back up again to make sure that it's lit properly. So now you've got your scene lit properly. We've got this kind of base level of lighting, which is great. That's the right place to start. What I now want to show you, just going back to this for a second, is ray tracing. Just make sure you've got that on so you can benefit from all the nice effects of ray tracing, reflections, nice soft shadows, and that kind of thing. Got to make sure you've got the right hardware. Got to make sure you've got your project settings set correctly. Make sure that you have to have an RTX card, at least a 20 series. You want to make sure that your project settings, you're going to set ray tracing on, your default RHI to DirectX 12, and enable support compute skin cache. You'll have to restart at that point. But the best thing, what I recommend, usually you're going to want it probably in filmmaking. So just when you create a project, just set ray tracing to be on from the beginning. You won't have to keep restarting all the time. It's annoying. You have to wait and make sure it recompiles all of your shaders, and it's annoying. Nobody likes waiting. But there's a gotcha which I found a couple of times that drove me nuts for weeks. I just turned ray tracing on. It didn't seem like it was working, and I couldn't see this lovely path tracing option, which I wanted, this which turns this into a full ray tracer. And I couldn't do GPU light mass baking, which is another cool thing that you can do to build your lighting to make it run really fast using the GPU, which builds it really fast as opposed to the CPU. And this was all grayed out, and this was not here. This path tracing was not here. So if you run into that problem, what's fixed it for me, and I thank the person whose name I can't remember, where I found this in the depths of the internet somewhere, delete your config folder. It will mean that you probably have to reset a few options, but that did enable, it did wake up ray tracing for me. So if you run into that problem, that's a really cool little top tip. So if you've got that set on, one awesome thing which I want to show quickly is RTXGI. You probably heard about Unreal 5 and its Nanite and its Lumen. Lumen is its kind of quasi real-time global illumination solution. There is something, as long as you've got an Nvidia card and it's the right type, you can enable RTXGI. You have to install the plugin to make this happen, but it will make Unreal 4 behave like it's got a real-time GI solution that's much better than the ray trace one. The you've got to install the plugin, so you can go to this link right here and follow the instructions. Very simple, just copy the plugin into the engine plugin folder. Go open Unreal, enable this plugin in plugins. You're then going to drag in an RTXGI volume. So the plugin is going to be right here. Turn on RTXGI. Okay, you want to enable this. It will make you restart it again, and then you're going to drag in RTXGI volume, drag that in, and scale it around. The one I've got in this scene is this box around this little house here. Not really a house, not a very good house anyway. But yeah, make sure that you're not using more of it than you need, I guess. So this little box around here is going to allow you to get this approximated GI solution, which runs really fast, which is great for real time. So once you've got that in your scene, you're then going to be looking at a few settings. Again, going back to here, you want to make sure that first that you enable these two console variables. So within this scene, I actually put them in the scene so I could remember in text. Very easy to set these on. You just hit the little tilde key and type in r.global, and then you'll see these little things pop up. You want this bottom one here, the experimental plugin, and type space1 and at the end, and then hit that on. That is going to turn it on. You can see it just kind of popped on there. The other one I want to set on is r.rtxgi.ddgi space1. Set that on as well. That's going to make it enabled. So now in this scene, we've got this pretty looking bounce light going on. You can see from this emissive material over here, from this shape here, this is actually bouncing light onto the wall. You can see that affecting the wall right there, which is amazing, I think. That's like, you used to have to really, really fight for that in offline rendering, and it still mightn't be quite as high quality as that, but it's really pretty good. You can affect the quality of it by changing a couple of settings here. You can up the samples, the probe counts. This is all being computed from these probes, and you can see them if you want. You can turn on visualize probes. You can see what's where those light contribution samples are coming from. Make sure you set the probe max ray distance to something really high so that those probes can reach off into a giant scene and find something to hit to give them some kind of value. And then also this light multiplier, you need to crank this up. And because we set the light to be manual, You have to crank this up quite high. I should, at this point, credit William Foucher for creating a great tutorial on this very thing. And he points out this light multiplier, which in this instance, if you're using this kind of correct, like high light value, you're going to have to crank it up really high. In this case, it's up to 200. You'll find that if you use it in that way, you have to crank it up pretty high to be able to see it. If I just turn them off, you can see that the contribution of that GI kind of ramping up and down. So yeah, that's the light contribution, and then there's like an emissive contribution, which I think does the emissive property. Anyway, very cool. And if I just drop into play mode here, you can see on the side of this character here, it's pretty dark because this is all just being lit by the outside light. If I go beyond the threshold of this little box, I just step just inside of that box, you'll see him start to get maybe not. Maybe I turned off the light contribution. What did I do to it? Did I break it? All right, let's crank it back up to something nice like that. Now when I go in, you should see it. It'll pick up some of the light from the inside there. So within that volume, you should be picking up the bounce light. You can kind of see it now. So yeah, that's RTXGI. Another really cool little top tip is DLSS. This uses deep learning to upscale your image, so you only have to render a lower resolution, which is much faster. Once you have, you then upscale to get your higher res. And it uses deep learning, uses a neural net to upscale it. So this is pretty simple. Just install the plugin and enable the plugin and restart, like we said with RTXGI. And then in the viewport here, you'll see in the viewport settings, you will see, where is it? DLSS settings. So if I turn that off, you'll see my frame rate drop to something awful, like 10 frames per second. If I go back here again and go to performance, you'll see it jump back up to 20. So I got almost a double frame rate from doing that. There are different models in it, so choose, like with everything in life, performance versus quality, speed versus quality, I guess, visual quality. But yeah, that's something that can radically improve your frame rate. So really, really cool thing to enable if you've got Nvidia hardware.